Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to round one coverage of the U.S. Chess Championship and U.S. Women's Championship taking place in St. Louis, Missouri. Today is, round one took place yesterday. Today they're doing round two, and I will include in the description of this video a link to the U.S. Chess Championship webpage, and you can follow live coverage. They're broadcasting the championship live during the day with commentary from Yasser Seirawan, Jennifer Shahada, and Maurice Ashley. So it's an interesting show. They talk about the games and they interview the players afterwards when they get a chance. So for round one, I picked one game to show you, and then I'll go over the results at the end. So the game I picked from round one was the game between Wesley So and Kamsky. Wesley So is one of the trio of top-rated players who are in this U.S. Chess Championship. Wesley So, Hikaru Nakamura, and Fabiano Caruana are all in the top 10 in the world, so very strong championship. And Kamsky, Wesley's opposition here, is a many-time U.S. champion, one of the older players in the field, but still a strong and very solid player, very tough player to take down. So Wesley So kicks off with e4. And Gata said afterwards he'd actually been expecting d5. He hadn't really prepared for e4. So when he saw e4, he just went for his normal setup. He typically plays the Breyer variation of the Ruy Lopez, and he just went for that. But then as he was playing it, he realized that actually it was pretty predictable. If Wesley was planning to play e4, he could pretty well predict that this is one of the lines that he might face, and so that he might very well have something prepared. But while having made the choice, he had to live with it. So this is the main line Ruy Lopez. Closed variation, kicking the bishop back, and then knight to f6. White castles, bishop to e7. So not grabbing the pawn and going for the open variation, and not playing the Berlin defense, but playing a traditional closed Ruy Lopez. Rook to e1, now defending the pawn. b5, kicking the bishop back. And d6. So just setting up with this closed center, not castling and playing for d5, which would be the Marshall gambit. And white tries to build up in the center with c3. Black castles. White goes with h3 to stop the pin. And the knight drops back to b8. This is a characteristic move of the Breyer variation, and the idea is to reroute the knight. The other choices here are knight to h5. The other popular ones, knight to h5 is probably the top choice. That's the Chigorin variation, and another very popular choice here is bishop to b7, the Zaitsev variation. But knight to b8 is an interesting alternative to those lines. It's the second choice after the Chigorin, and a solid way to play. White gets to complete the build-up in the center with d4, and the knight reroutes to d7, going over to, it has a couple ideas, maybe defending on the king side a little bit, and maybe hopping into c5 in some circumstances. And then white now begins this typical redeployment of the queenside knight you see on the Ruy Lopez. Bishop goes to b7, bishop drops back to c2, defending this pawn, which is starting to come under some fire with the bishop and the knight. Another idea of the Breyer variation is it's got the knight off of this square, and so it allows black to bring some quick pressure against e4. Let's see, rook to e8 is played, with maybe a threat of taking and grabbing this pawn, but the knight just goes to f1, and bishop to f8. Black is completing this redeployment of the bishop. And it's kind of funny. This knight gets redeployed, gets developed to f6, and then it goes back and gets redeployed. And the same thing with this bishop. This bishop goes to e7, and then it gets redeployed back on g7. So it's a closed position, and black can get away with these maneuvers, but it is kind of interesting. Knight to g3, white completes his maneuver, and now g6, making a square for the bishop, and also taking a look at trying to control the f5 square. And now Wesley here plays an interesting move, bishop to g5. Not the most common move here, so we're getting a little bit away from the main line here. The main line continues with a4. There's a couple different ways to play at this point, actually, but one of them that's very popular is a4, trying to maybe weaken the structure over here a little bit. Black can continue with c5, d5, now closing the center. so there's no longer any threat to this pawn. c4, well, not much of a threat. It's all well defended at this point. Now bishop to g5 here, and h6, and the bishop drops back to e3, and the knight hops into c5. So black gets a little pressure on the pawn this way, but it's adequately defended. And this is an interesting position from which many games have been played. Let's go back to this position once again. Another alternative here, which I think is kind of interesting, is b3, pushing the b pawn forward. And we'll see the idea is to build up a big pawn wedge over here. Black continues bishop g7. White plays d5, closing the center again. Rook to c8, and c4, building up this monster wedge of pawns. Another interesting way for white to play. But both of these are also okay for black. So bishop g5 is slightly less common way to play. h6 immediately kicking the bishop, and now the bishop cannot go back to e3 because the pawn is hanging. And the other line, d5 had been played, and this pawn was safe. So the bishop has to go back to d2. So it's perhaps a drawback of this early bishop g5 deployment, or perhaps part of the plan. Anyway, bishop g7 was played here, and a4, now undermining these queenside pawns. So these same ideas are occurring, you see, in many Ruy Lopez, just in a different order. And now the most common move here is c5, after which d5, and then c4, once again with the idea of freeing up the square for the knight to come forward. But Gata has his own way of playing this position. He goes with c6 here. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with this move. Nothing has gone wrong so far. But Wesley So decides to open up the position a little bit and trade off some pieces. So he opens up the a file with this exchange and takes on a8, which drags the queen away actually from defense of the king side for a move. And now he plays knight h4. So just trying to get active on the king side while the queen is momentarily away. And the queen rushes back to defend. And now queen c1, lining up queen and bishop on the h6 pawn. And black defends with a very natural move, king h7. I probably would have snapped that move off myself, but this turns out to be a mistake. So here's a chance, if you want to try and figure out what Wesley played in this position. What's the good move for white here? Okay, yeah, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away. What Wesley played here was knight h to f5, just putting that knight out there where it could be taken. And I did mention this f5 square is kind of sensitive in the Ruy Lopez, so you always have to be on the lookout for these kind of ideas. Let's back up and just show the best defense here. The best defense, according to the chess engine, is to play the knight back to h7. And that forces the issue with this knight. And the best move for white, according to the chess engine, again, is just to drop back and play on in this position with about equal chances. But it turns out, even in this position, white can try the knight to h5 idea, and knight h to f5 idea. And after the exchange, and we'll compare this to what happened in the game, knight takes, and now the queen can come out, because there's no knight blocking this square, and the queen is controlling a lot of squares where this queen might find entry. But, well, white can win a second pawn. Bishop takes h6. There's just enough force to win that pawn. And then the line given by the engine goes like this, with actually taking the queens off. Probably you could take with the knight there instead of the queen if you wanted to keep it more complicated. But this is the line given as best play by the engine. And knight back to f5. And it thinks white still has some slight edge here. So it's not like this is, even though white is a piece down, has only got 2 pawns, and there's a lot of material trading, you might think black has good chances in the endgame. But there's still some weaknesses here. The knight's taking a look at the undefended d6 pawn, and black's king is exposed, and white's pieces can hop in pretty quickly. Anyway, apparently enough compensation for white to give white a slight edge in this position. So anyway, that knight f5 is an interesting idea. But after king h7, the knight f5 idea is even stronger. You need to take, probably, because if you don't, you're just going to lose this pawn over here anyway. So you might as well grab the knight, get some material for your trouble. And once again, black can get 2 pawns. He gets this pawn, the former G pawn, and he also gets the H pawn. There's just no way to defend it against all the attackers. And notice that queen f6 is not playable here because the knight's in the way, but the rook e6 is available. The rook comes up, and now bishop takes was played, and then the knight dropped back to e8 to defend the bishop. And here Wesley didn't trade any more material, but was just poking around. He played bishop to g5. And what Wesley said after the game was, when he was calculating this combination, he really couldn't see it all the way through. He just saw that he could get 2 pawns for the piece, and he could open up black's king, and it looked a little bit dangerous for black, and that was probably good enough compensation, so he went for it. And right here, black's best defense would be a move like queen to c7, just moving away from the glare of the bishop, and trying to hold this position. His king is still awkwardly placed, and white still has the advantage here, but it's the game would continue for a while, and there are possibilities that white could mess up. It's not a foregone conclusion that white will win by any means, although the chess engine gives white about a 1 pawn advantage in this position. Instead, Kamsky played bishop to f6, and this actually causes a loss to occur pretty quickly. So takes, and Kamsky takes back with the queen. Wesley plays d5, kicking the rook. The rook drops back to e7, and right here he plays the final move of the game. It's introducing a tactic that is strong enough that Kamsky just resigned. So why don't you pause the video here and see if you can find the move that Wesley played. And I have to say, it's kind of a subtle move, but the tactic, once you see it, is pretty strong. Okay, I'm giving the answer away now. The move that Wesley played was g4, and Kamsky resigned. And the point is that g5 is unstoppable, and the queen has nowhere to go that defends the rook. And the rook has no moves either. The rook can't escape from the knight. So white is going to win a whole piece here, and there's no preventing it. So Kamsky resigned. A quick victory for Wesley So, and a very nice way for him to start off the championship. Let's take a look at the standings here. It's a 12-player round robin, so there'll be a total of 11 rounds. This is the cross table after round 1. Ignore the title there. And you see there was a lot of decisive games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 out of 6 games were decisive on the men's side. In the Open Championship. And that's unusual. Usually there's more draws, but there are some strong players and also some young challengers in here, so a mix of different players. So the winners were the usual suspects, Nakamura, Wesley So, and Fabiano Caruana. They won their games. Also, Sam Shanklin and Ray Robson, 2 promising younger players, won their games. So have an interesting field shaping up here. Jeff Zhang drew with Alexander Onashek, and then Linderman, Kamsky, Chandra, Akobian, and Shabalov lost their games respectively. So that's where things stand in the championship. And then in the women's championship, there is, let's get to the cross table, the same number of players. There's 12 players, so it's an 11-round round robin. There were only 2 decisive games. Actually, there's a bit of a reversal. A lot of times you'll see the opposite, where there's more decisive results on the women's side than on the men's side. But, the round 1 was different. In fact, Irina Krush and Anna Zatonsky, who are the pre-tournament favorites, the top-ranked players, and both prior champions, they both drew their first-round games. So the early lead goes to Tatev Abrahamyan and Carissa Yip. So interesting field shaping up there too. We'll see if Irina and Anna can get back into the game there. And of course, after round one, there are lots of opportunities to catch up. So I'll be doing continuing coverage. Stay tuned, and I will see you later. Bye.